Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, we're going to be talking about neighborhood violence and how we can keep our neighborhoods safe, as I am joined by crime prevention specialist Stephanie Mann. Statistics show that 1 in 5 of high school kids experience neighborhood violence, and Stephanie wants to prevent that. She has a neighborhood safer approach, so we're going to be talking to her. We know we have a lot of violence going on in the country and throughout the world, so we're going to be talking to her about how to prevent it and anything else that she's up to. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you so much, Curtis, for inviting me to be here.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been a crime and violence prevention consultant for 40 years, and I started out, it goes back a while, but I was abandoned when I was 15 years old in Mexico City, and I didn't speak the language, so I had to learn how to survive. And when I became a crime and violence prevention consultant, I learned how other people survive, and a lot of them did it the same way I did. And it's been an amazing journey, and I'm happy to share anything I've learned with your audience.
Well, the first thing I would like you to share is what are the common safety mistakes that parents make without even realizing it?
Well, I think today the most common mistake is, I think there are two. Number one, I don't think they teach their kids. Now, this certainly doesn't apply to everybody, but there are some people that don't teach their children how to live by their own conscience. So when they start to make mistakes or do bad behavior or make very bad decisions for themselves, and they're going against their conscience, this can end up to be a very sad situation for the whole family. And working in higher crime neighborhoods, I found out that a lot of parents are not only their kids are taking drugs, but some of the parents are taking drugs. And we really need to have a support system go back to the neighborhood. Years ago, people used to take care of each other and rely on each other to, help their children. I want to be the first to know if there's a problem with my child in the neighborhood, if they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing. Years ago, people used to call a mother or father and say, Jemiah is out doing bad stuff. He's, graffiti, and he's been stealing out of stores and so forth. And some of the parents didn't even know it. But today, a lot of the neighbors don't even pay attention anymore. So I think that has to change because we have less police in our communities than we used to have. And we've got more crime than we used to have. And I think if everybody's tired of it, get together with your neighbors and talk about, what are we going to do? And I can give you a few stories about that, because neighbors are powerful, but they're not powerful if they're not engaged, and they have to be engaged in their neighborhood. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And go ahead and share some stories about that.
Well, I got started in my own community of 17,000 people, and we were unincorporated, which means we didn't have a mayor, we didn't have a city council. We had a supervisor that was 18 miles away, and he was our law and order. And we had 1.5 police officers for the whole community of 17,000. Well, the problem became a real problem when we had a crime wave going on, And so some of us, and this is how I basically got started, some of us got together and started talking about, okay, this is crazy. We've got a crime wave. People are not safe. What are we going to do? So 10 of us got together. We sat down and talked about it, and we decided to get the neighbors together. And as a result of working with the neighbors, to calling on our friends and saying, let's get these neighborhoods working together, we reduced our own crime problem 48% within 2.5 years. And that was without a local police department. So uh, neighbors are very powerful when it comes to wanting a safe community. And because most of our crime is committed by juveniles. And I guess a lot of us don't know that the average age for violence uh, is between 15 and 17 years old. Now, those are young people. And as the time goes by and they turn to be 22, 23, crime all of a sudden goes way down. By the time they're 24 years old, and it tapers off to, and as they get older, they don't commit crimes anymore. So it's really up to neighbors if you're going to stop the crime problem. Now, we've got 400,000 children in gangs today. So we've made it much more difficult for us to stop crime. And so I'll give you another example. I was working for Oakland Police Department in California, and oh my, we had so many problems. But one of the problems was that Earl called up our office, which was in community services, and said, and actually demanded that the police do something about the crime in his neighborhood. He said, we've got a drug dealer on one corner and prostitutes on the other corner. And this is crazy. I have a 10-year-old daughter. She doesn't feel safe walking to school. And you guys have got to do something. Well, they sent me to go over and talk to Earl. Well, I sat down with Earl and I said, police do not have the resources to make your neighborhood safe right now. And I said, if you get your neighbors together and have them walk the dog, play checkers, uh, water the grass, or play, get out into the neighborhood and start taking down descriptions, time of day, what is the license numbers, descriptions. Well, within, I think it was about 3 months, something like that, 3.5 months. They had enough information that they gave to the police department to arrest the people in that neighborhood, and they cleaned up the neighborhood. Of course, if every neighborhood did that, then you would not have the drug dealer move to another neighborhood or the prostitutes move to another neighborhood. So we really need to have paid staff go in and help these neighborhoods get organized. If that happens, you will see a big difference in how safe you are, your community is, your children are. So that's just two stories.
Absolutely. Well, give some best practice tips on how we can help our kids prevent violence and instead of just avoiding it.
Well, one of the things that is happening that I think is alarming is the fact that we are not teaching our children to live by their own conscience. I think we've all heard, let your conscience be your guide. Well, that's basically your spiritual ability to protect yourself. So when your conscience, if you go against your conscience and you go out and rob and steal, and your conscience bothers you, but the easier it gets, the more you do it. So then your child or your teenager is going down the wrong road. And as they go down this road, then they become much more of a dangerous threat to the community. And then once they get into a gang, then the gang reinforces bad behavior. And then you've got a real problem going on. So it's going to take a lot of community effort in order to stop that kind of interaction for children. And it's basically, I call it a spiritual problem. We have to teach our children how to live by their own spirit so that they don't do bad stuff. Because when kids do bad stuff, it makes them feel bad whether they want to feel bad about it or not. And that's a lot of the reason it drives them toward drugs. I want to forget what I'm becoming. I mean, this is all a spiritual problem. So, it's critical for parents to talk to their kids about it.
Let's take a quick break.
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
Well, another thing parents should be talking to their kids about is how to recognize danger without fearing the world around them. So what are some ways that we can do that with our kids?
Well, that's another spiritual thing. You also have instincts. You have instincts that will alert you to danger. When I was at the police department, it was too common to have somebody say, I knew I shouldn't have let that guy in my house, and he came in and he raped her. Or I knew I shouldn't get in that elevator with that man, and he grabbed her purse, and when the door opened, he was gone. I mean, we want to teach our children how to live from within ourselves so that they have the tools to help them not become a victim. And we have all of these tools, but somehow we aren't talking to our kids about it, and they're not learning from their parents or their peers how to protect themselves. I was abandoned in Mexico City, as I mentioned, when I was 15, and I learned that the hard way. I mean, when you don't have anybody to rely on and you're living in a place you don't know anyone, what would you do? Well, I'll tell you, you learn either that or you get in a very bad situation. Fortunately, I remembered something that my grandmother told me when I was probably 8 years old, because I didn't see her very often, but it went right into my head. And she said, if you ever have a problem, you can always turn to God. And that is what I did. In Mexico City, they have little churches on the block, and I mean really little churches. They're like little chapels, and maybe holds 40 people. And I just went in there and I just prayed. I need help here, and I got the help I needed. It was amazing. So teach your kids that if they've got a problem, ask the good Lord for some help, because they're not alone. And that's another thing we need to talk to our kids about. You're not alone. You have that wonderful ability within yourself. You have, surrounded by people that get to know them. Don't be isolated. And if you're shy, you don't want to be a bully or a victim. You want to strengthen your kids so that they are not victims. And that's a very important part of growing up.
Well, speaking of strengthening our kids, let's talk about the role that peer pressure plays in neighborhood violence, and how can our kids be taught to resist it?
Peer pressure is a very strong emotion because everybody wants to belong. They want to have friends. They want to feel like they are part of the community. So if somebody comes along and says, I want you to join our group, this is such an important time to talk to adults and encourage your kids to talk to a teacher if they're confused about, what's going on, what should I do? Um, Make sure your kids have people in their lives that will advise them, a grandmother, a grandfather, hopefully some male role models for boys, because um, there are an awful lot of children that live in a community and maybe they don't have the parent or or the two parents that really kids really do need. So I'll tell you a little story about AJ. And AJ, he he moved into a neighborhood that was fairly new to him and his wife, and he had two girls. And he noticed that there were a lot of kids in the neighborhood, but there weren't many fathers. He only saw one or two. And he thought, wow, there are about 25 kids in this neighborhood. Well, he decided to start Christmas on the streets. So Christmas on the streets for them, when he got started, was just to have a get together at Christmas time. And he dressed up as Santa Claus. He invited all the kids to come, and he engaged some of the neighbors. And they went out and got some candies and just small things for the children. And they had a Christmas party, basically, for the children. Now, that's something any of us could do, but will we do it? Anyway, AJ went on and did that for 20 years in his neighborhood with 25 kids. And then pretty soon he had kids from all over coming. And then he had a jumpy house. He got donations. They had presents. A couple of people worked together and made a sleigh for Santa Claus. And he dressed up as Santa Claus, and they had their pictures taken by people in the neighborhood. And you can make Christmas a wonderful occasion for the children, but you're going to have to do something. Go out and look and see who's in your neighborhood. If you don't know, I'll give you, if you go to my website, safekidsnow.com, I have a free download, and anybody can download it. And it teaches you how to, in 10 steps, how to make your neighborhood safe. So I'll give you some tips right here. One thing you need to ask, 3 questions. You're going to go door to door and say, I am your neighbor. I live right there. And can I ask you 3 questions? And some people might slam the door in your face. Okay, go to the next house. But if they're willing to answer your question, okay, my question is, have you been a victim of crime in our neighborhood? Because if you don't know what's going on in your own neighborhood, you could very well be a victim and not know that that's happened before, right next door or down the street. And what is your biggest concern in our neighborhood? Now, that could be anything from maybe it's a pothole, or maybe it's a drug dealer in the neighborhood. Maybe it's well, who knows? That's what you're supposed to find out. And then say, after you've had this discussion, will you help? And the person that you're talking to, oh, no, I don't have time for that. Well, okay, go to the next house. Or the next house, they said, I've been wondering if somebody would help this neighborhood. Sure, I'll help. Then you go to the next house and you find maybe you have just 2 or 3 people that say, I will help. And then you have a coffee with just those 2 or 3 people and say, okay, what are we going to do? Let's do something together. Okay, maybe it's a coffee. It could be a get together. It could be a block party. Could be a Christmas on the street party. I mean, let's bring these neighborhoods back into action. I know there's a lot of fear out there, but you are not powerless. None of us are powerless. We all have the power to create change. And that's what I would hope any of us and all of us will do for the sake of the children, because it's the kids that are paying the big price here for neighborhoods that are disconnected, neighborhoods that have allowed the gangs to take over. Take back your power. Because if you don't take back your power, believe me, somebody else will take your power.
Well, I know you founded 27 citywide prevention committees, so talk about some of the experiences and the lessons from those 27 citywide prevention committees that families can apply today.
If people have support, they will engage. If they feel isolated and alone, they won't, because they don't want to be the only one. We need community. That was probably the biggest thing I learned, Curtis, is that people need relationships to inspire each other. That's one of the big things I learned. People need to feel that they're part of something. If you're sitting home and watching television all day, how depressing. Oh my goodness. We have to get away from the television, the negative stuff that's going on, because our neighborhoods are much, much more safer than you think they are. One incident happens in a neighborhood, and I learned this from I worked in all these different cities, and there was more fear than there was a problem in the neighborhood. You don't know what's going on if you don't ask. And buckle up, get out there and find out what's going on. If you don't know, and you want to do a little research, go to your police department and say, uh, how can I help make my neighborhood safe? A lot of times police departments do have information. They've also got all kinds of pamphlets on how to keep your kids safe. And you can just go and pass that information out into the neighborhood. Just make a small step. Whatever step anybody feels comfortable with, take that step. And you'll be surprised what you learn. It's much more gratifying to make a difference in your own neighborhood than listening to what people are doing that don't even live in your neighborhood. You can hear a lot of information about what's not happening and how bad things are, because that's what the media does. If it bleeds, it leads. And I can't tell you or encourage you enough to go and do something about the problems that are in the community. Maybe you have child sex trafficking. I've worked with child sex trafficking groups. We have an incredible amount of children that are missing, still missing. 85,000 kids came into the United States and they don't know what happened to them. They have found several hundred here and there, but they got spread out all over the country and they don't know who these people are. They didn't even register them. What? I mean, do we care about the kids? Either we care about them or we don't. If we're sitting there thinking, ain't it awful? Believe me, it's not going to get better. If you're waiting for somebody else to take the bull by the horns, it's not going to happen. We can sit here and talk and talk and talk. But basically, what we really need is action, and action starts with you. So, okay, I hope that helps.
Oh, it absolutely does. Well, we'll talk about how educational leaders and community leaders can work together to enforce safety habits outside of the home.
Well, there are an awful lot of people that are involved. We have boys and girls clubs. We have different organizations. We have dance groups. We have YMCAs. Get your children involved because when they're involved, they make connections with other kids. And do you know that 62% of Americans are socially isolated, which is a killer recipe? It is not healthy to be socially isolated. Your kids are not healthy if they're socially isolated. We have to bring back community. And it's going to be up to you and me and all of the people in our cities to understand that if you don't get involved, you're allowing bad things to happen. We can't just sit back and hope for the best. So find out what's going on in your community besides the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Clubs, and see if there's a art classes for kids for the summer, swimming programs in the summer. There should be a lot of Christmas parties going on now, and maybe you're involved in some of them. Ask a neighbor to join you. Find out if the kid across the street who doesn't have a father in the home can go with you. Just help one or two people. And then once you get started or you volunteer in a group, you're going to find your life much richer. It's exciting to help other people because it makes you feel good and it makes them feel good. So it's time for all of us to reach out and help each other.
We'll talk about the difference between raising kids that are street smart versus community aware.
The difference? I think they're very similar. When you raise kids, they have to be community oriented too, because the community is your support system. Teachers in school, and please go to your school board meetings. Find out what they're teaching your children. I think hopefully you've heard that there's some really weird things going on in some of our schools. And you need to know what they are teaching your child. And I know people are busy, but if you care about your kids, they come first. I have 3 children, and I was down there at the school. And as a matter of fact, one of my daughter's teachers was coming to school with alcohol and on her breath, and also acting very strange, which my daughter reported to me. And I was down there in a flash and finding out, what's going on here. Are you aware of this? And they corrected the teacher and said, if this continues to happen, we have to put you on report. They can't seem to fire teachers today, but they can get corrected. So there are a lot of things we as citizens can do to help our kids stay strong and safe. And, your child might rebel and say, oh, mom or dad, don't go. I don't want you to do that. I can take care of myself. Yes, maybe. But there's no harm in checking on everything your child is doing. It's up to you to keep them safe and give them the tools they need in order to stay safe. So I don't know, did that answer your question, Curtis?
Yep, it absolutely did.
Good.
And another question I have for you is, I was going through your bio and I see that in Mexico City, you were put in a Texas hospital for a week. So talk about that situation.
Oh my goodness. Well, my visit to Mexico City, my abandonment in Mexico City was horrendous. And when you're 15 and you have no one to talk to, My mother and her boyfriend left me there. And as a matter of fact, he was a Washington, D.C. politician, if you can believe that. And he said he needed her in Washington to help with entertaining. And they do a lot of entertaining in Washington. And so they set me up at Mexico City College to take, I should have been a sophomore in high school, but they set me up to take Spanish and art. I was good at art. And those were the only two classes I took. Well, when they didn't return, they gave me enough money for a month because they said they'd be back in 2 or 3 weeks. Well, the money ran out after a month. I began to panic, and I got so sick in very short period of time. When children are isolated and they have no one, it affects their health almost immediately. And the landlady wanted to toss me out on the street because I couldn't pay my rent. I was renting a room in a home. And so I went to the dean of women at the college where I was taking art and Spanish. And I told her my story, and she said, "Oh, well," and gave me a bunch of books and says you can be an interpreter. And I said, "My Spanish is terrible. I can't be an interpreter." And anyway, that whole thing fell apart, and I got so stressed and so sick that they finally decided they better look up my mother and find her somewhere and get her to come back because they didn't know what to do with me. They gave me penicillin and I got all kinds of hives. I was reacting to medication they were giving me. So anyway, my mother finally had to return. They found her because I told her about the boyfriend and what he did. And so they tracked him down, and she flew in, and we were told that they probably wouldn't let me back into the United States because they didn't know what kind of disease I had. And as a result of that, I took nothing from Mexico. We just got on a plane and went straight through, and I ended up in the hospital in San Antonio, Texas, and I was there for a week, so to recuperate. So that's my story about getting out of Mexico. It wasn't fun.
Well, tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that listeners need to be aware of.
Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm very concerned. I'm here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and this is called Sin City for a reason. And we have as many as, oh my goodness, I've heard the number as high as 31,000 prostitutes and pimps coming into Las Vegas on a huge holiday or when we have a lot of traffic coming in here, which we do often. We have big events in Las Vegas. And so one of the things that I'm working on, which I mentioned, was child sex trafficking, which is a horrible um, happening for children. And the youngest child I've seen is probably about 13, maybe 14. And this is a very difficult, and it's hard to get them out once they're in it. So I'm working on the prevention side because I see what happens to these kids once they're into prostitution or once they're into sex trafficking, all of these, and they use drugs on these children. And matter of fact, I have a website called safekidsnow.com. And if you go to our videos, I have videos with people that have been, I interview on prostitution. They were pimps. One was a pimp, and he was pimping out high school girls when he was 16 years old. And now he works with children and helping them. Another lady was a prostitute for, oh my goodness, I can't remember how many years, but she was in it. And finally, um, she told somebody she was underage, and that that was the trick that got her out. She told a police officer she was underage, and so they got her out of it. But kids are taught not to speak up. They're taught to do what they're told. That's why I want to empower parents, uh, and within themselves. You've got to let them know they have power, that other people, don't know about. They can get out of these situations. I got out of it in Mexico City, and for a very good reason. Because it almost killed me. It's almost killing a lot of these kids. So it's important for all of us to be aware of what is going on in our own community. Go down to the police station or find out what's going on in your community. Do you have a problem with child sex trafficking? Because every community that I've run into has a problem with it. And, what are they doing about it? Most of them are begging for volunteers. They even offer training in some of our communities. So I encourage you to go and talk to the people around you, and in the community, and not just police departments, but also people that are involved in child sex trafficking, or volunteering for court. I mean, there are a lot of things they're looking for volunteers for. So if you can, and you're fine, there are some paid jobs out there. If you don't know where they are, start asking. So we need your help, and we need your help to save our kids.
And you said that website was safekidsnow.com?
I'm sorry?
What was your website again?
Oh, safekidsnow, one word, .com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So you guys make sure you go to that site, and as Stephanie said, get out there in the community and, volunteer, check things out. Share this episode to as many people as you know. We have a lot of violence and stuff going on in the community, and there could be somebody that could get their life saved by hearing this show. So please share it. And also visit www.curveball337.com for more information on the show, and share that site also to everybody that you know. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Stephanie, thank you for all that you do to try to make our world a safer place, one neighborhood at a time. And thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you, Curtis. I enjoyed the opportunity. Thank you.
For more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, visit www.curveball337.com. Until next time, keep living the dream.